Hey everybody, welcome back to RPG Rookies, where we cover Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop role-playing games, and all things fantasy. I am your Dungeon Minion, and today we're going to be unboxing this game right here, and it's not a tabletop RPG. This is a board game, and it's called Runebound, and in particular, this is the second edition. This is from Fantasy Flight Games, a board game publisher that's known in particular for their fantasy-themed games, and they have basically created their own fantasy world known as the Terranoff universe, and this game here is one of many games in their catalog that takes place within that Terranoff universe. So I'm going to remove the lid right here, and here we've got the rule book, and we've got some diagrams here explaining how to set up the game and the different rules. And if you like fantasy adventure and you like throwing dice around in order to resolve conflicts and skill tests and other types of challenges, this game provides that in abundance. So as you can see here, I have lots of content for the game here in this box. I already have a few expansion sets, and some of these expansions offer different variant adventures or scenarios. So this here, for example, is the Cataclysm variant. Here we have the Scepter of Kairos, and here we have the Avatars of Kelnov. And this is in addition to the scenario, which is the High Lord Margath, that the base game comes with. As I mentioned, these are expansions. They do not come with the game. One thing I need to warn you guys, a caveat, is that this game is out of print. It has been out of print for nearly 2 decades now. However, you can occasionally get it for a pretty good price on eBay or on some other secondary markets. So here are some cards for the base game. I have already taken the liberty to sleeve them. And these are the different scenario or adventure cards. One of the things that you're doing during setup is you're populating the board with different tokens corresponding to the color of the different types of adventures. And whenever a player with their character lands on said location, they can go on an adventure, and basically they would draw one of the cards from the corresponding deck and resolve it. And most of these cards represent enemies, characters that you will be fighting that have particular hit points, and they have particular stats in the 3 different combat types in this game. Every time you engage in combat, you're going to go sequentially from left to right through each of the different combat types. You have range, you have melee, and you have magical combat. And if characters are still around, you will go through another round from left to right of all of these battles until either you give up, or until you are knocked out, or until your enemy is knocked out. And there are a lot of different enemies, and sometimes you have different adventures or quests that you might go on that give you additional challenges and additional ways of recruiting items, or maybe acquiring loot that you can use, money, treasure that you can use later on to go to the different markets and buy your characters different items, different weapons, different spells and such. Here you got these event cards, which basically tell you something storyline driven and also modify the game rules for as long as this event is in play. And subsequent events will replace previous events, and so on and so forth. Now, the yellow here would be the second easiest adventures. Here we have the blue adventures. They are harder than the yellow. They're the second hardest. There are 4 different levels of adventures you go on. And you'll notice that the challenges get tougher. The enemies you confront or encounter get much more challenging. Here we have additional adventures. We have the green adventures, who are the easiest adventures. And because they are the easiest, this deck here is the biggest. And early on, you're fighting relatively beatable enemies. Don't take them for granted. You could still lose or incur lots of damage. And basically, every time you defeat an enemy, you're going to have a reward printed on the bottom. It's usually in the form of money, gold, that again, you're going to use to get your characters more items. Also, each time you defeat an enemy, you will gain their token, their adventure token that was in that location. And each of the location tokens give you 1 or more experience points, depending on their difficulty. Later on throughout the course of the game, you're going to be using those experience points in order to level up your character and permanently increase their different stats. Here, the red stack here is the hardest level of adventure. That's why there's the fewest of them. And basically, players eventually want to go through this red stack and be the first player. This is a completely competitive game. They want to be the first player to either defeat the High Lord Margath or defeat 3 different Dragon Lords. So most of this deck consists of other Dragon Lords other than Margath. And if you defeat 3 because you don't get to High Lord Margath, let's say he's buried deep within this deck, you should be okay as long as you can survive and succeed in 3 different outcomes or 3 different encounters with different Dragon Lords. So basically, every time you would play an expansion, one of these variants, you would switch out some of the cards from each of the corresponding decks in order to make it more tailored to that particular scenario. We also have tons of item cards. Again, I do have expansions, so this includes a lot of stuff. Just give you a little peek at some of the things you can acquire throughout the course of the game. You have this Cloak of Levitation. You have this Chest of Plenty, this Staff of Sparks, this Fate Dice of Greyhaven, the Mirror of Shael, Banner of the Ram, the Belt of Strength. You have this Potion of Strength, this Crystal Staff, this Vestments of Kelos, Orcish Boar Bracer, the Cloak of Useful Items, Banner of the Ram, Crown of Dawnsmore, Cloak of Useful Items. You have this another Potion of Healing, Lantern of Revealing, Backpack of Holding, Chalice of Tamalir, and you have tons of these. These here are one particular category. These are the artifacts, and I have tons of artifacts. But you also have different card types. You have allies, and allies are something, they're a card type that you acquire at the market as well, but they're very useful because they're going to make you more effective in combat. Early on in the game, you're going to be very inefficient as a fighter, and you're going to find yourself struggling to win battles. But as you recruit allies, and you can have up to 2 allies with you at a time, as you recruit allies, you're going to become much more effective of a fighter. And there's tons of allies. Again, some of this represents expansion content as well. So tons of allies here. And then we also have runes, and of course we have weapons, probably my favorite card type. We have the Dwarven Firebomb, we have the Great Bow, we have the Soul Biter as a sword, we have another copy of the Great Bow, we have the Heartfinder, the Alchemist's Flash's Bomb, the Rage Blade, the Long Spear of Forge, the Longbow of Tamalir, the War Axe of Dawnsmore, the Black Dagger, the 4 blades, and again, just tons and tons of weapons that players are going to be acquiring with their gold when they go to the market. All right, and then the game comes with all of these different characters, and there's a bunch of different unique characters here, and basically each character comes with their health stats. They come with their fatigue. Fatigue is another health currency, if you will, that allows you to do particular actions. But if you exhaust too much of your fatigue, you won't be able to use those actions. And if you incur further fatigue before you're able to rest, then that fatigue will actually translate into damage. Each character has some special abilities that distinguish them from other players. For example, Barracus here, the Dead, has a before combat ability. Each character also has skills, and there's skills such as jump and resist and hide and sneak and tinker. And each of these give them modifiers to their skill checks in particular types. There's lots of different skill tests that you will or could do throughout the course of the game. And as your character's particular strengths, you would like to accentuate them, or you would like to capitalize on them, and in particular skills, one character would be more effective than the other. Also, each character has a stat for their range, their melee, and their magical combat. Not to mention how much damage they deal in each respective combat. So for example, he has a modifier of 1 when he rolls a range combat. However, he only deals 1 damage. Now for melee, not only does he have a modifier of 2, but he also deals 2 damage. So you're further incentivized, not only because of the high modifier, but also because of the high total damage that he does. You're incentivized to focus on melee attack when you're attacking with this particular character. So yeah, and each of these different characters have different strengths as far as their different types of combats. And then the game also comes with a bunch of tokens here, not to mention your miniatures. This game has miniatures for each of the respective characters, and not necessarily the greatest quality per se, but for 2005 standards, it's not too bad. And each character has their own mold. Now, the game comes with these 2 D10 dice, which you're going to be using to resolve combat and also to resolve any other types of skill tests. Now, the coolest thing about this game probably is these 5 dice right here. These are your terrain dice. And the game comes here with a board, which consists of a map of the lands of Terranov here. Here we go. And yeah. And all of these hexagonal spaces represent a space where a particular character could occupy. And as you see the map, it has diverse terrains. You have forest terrains, and you have hill terrains and mountain terrains, and you have the plains, and you have rivers. And to move through these terrain, you actually have to roll these 5 dice, and you have to spend them almost as a currency for each space you traverse. And these dice, each side of the die, has 2 or maybe even 3 different corresponding terrains. And in order to enter a particular terrain, you have to spend a face of the die that has that terrain printed on it. Now, the fields or the plains most obviously are the easiest to traverse, so they're the most common on these dice. However, terrains like mountains and rivers can be a little bit more challenging and therefore a little bit more rare for you to roll them. So you're going to be using all that. The roads here basically grant you free movements. So whenever you see a road, it's very strategic to stay near it because it could grant you additional movement or at least allow you to move without any particular faces of the die to spend. So this is what the map looks like. And basically you're going to be populating these spots with the different adventure tokens and seeing what you do there. All right, and that is the board here. And I think that's pretty much it as far as our unboxing. This is Runebound 2nd edition. Again, if you like fantasy adventure and you do not mind playing some board games as opposed to tabletop role-playing games, this can be a great alternative for you and your friends. Please comment down below. Tell me if you'd be interested in seeing some future playthroughs of this game to see how it actually plays. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for joining us here at RPG Rookies. Take care. Bye-bye.